All right, welcome everyone to our second August lecture. Oh, I'm starting out a little cold, so let me warm up here. So we had Paul Winsky last week, and this week we are going to have Shannon Dietz, the Texas A&M Ag agent here in Harris County, talking about homegrown lawn maintenance, part 2. He covered part 1 last month. And then next week, we'll be focusing on fall vegetable varieties with Prairie View Ag Agent Kim Perry, and then myself, Brandy Keller, with Elements of Landscape Design. So welcome again for being here. We're still trying to get used to this new platform of Teams Live, and we really appreciate your support. So we'll go ahead and get started. Shannon, it's all yours.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Brandy. Again, my name is Shannon Dietz, County Ag Agent here in Harris County with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. This is part 2 of our home lawn maintenance and care presentation. Last month, we did go over some of the basics of, we talked about ground covers, we talked a little bit about turf grass in general, and so forth. And then this month, we are going to be going a little bit deeper into the subject matter by going into some specifics of a couple different lawns that you might find here in the Houston, Texas area, Southeast Texas, coastal Texas areas. And these can apply actually anywhere along the coast of the southern United States. They're pretty spread throughout. So with that being said, some of our goals that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk a little bit about soil testing and why it's important in your lawn management plan. We talked a little bit about that last month, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. We are going to touch a little bit more on St. Augustine grass, why it might be good in your yard, why it might not be good, some diseases, pests, and control methods. And then finally, we're going to wrap up by applying insecticides to the home lawn and some of the things you should be very aware of and careful in doing so. So first of all, we're going to start off a little bit about turf. And everybody should understand, I guess, basically when you think of turf, you think of grass all of a sudden. But it is a very wide subject matter area. There are over 10,000 species of grass in the world, and about 12 of those are considered turf grass. Turf grasses are narrow-leaved plants. They provide uniform color. They tolerate low mowing and traffic, and they have a variety of characteristics. They can be adapted to different site-adapted areas, and so it's a very interesting area that we talk about. They can be divided into warm and cool season grasses. Here in coastal areas of Texas, Southeast Texas, and so forth, we mostly speak on and give information on warm season grasses, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, mainly St. Augustine and Bermuda grass. And you'll see some of the benefits there that grass and turf they allow us to live in the world and so forth like that. So they include controlling erosion, oxygen production, and they also help in the carbon dioxide reduction. They help in lowering the temperature. Grasses around homes, it's been shown that you can reduce the temperature by several degrees with the proper lawn care and so forth, other than just a flat dirt surface and so forth. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about those today. And first of all, we're going to be talking about a soil sample. We talk about this all the time, and one of the first things that usually whenever I get a call into the office, or I know Paul gets a call in, or Kim, or Brandy, we usually talk about soil samples. If you haven't taken a soil sample, of your current yard in the past 1 to 3 years, it's probably a really good idea if you go ahead and do that now. And then the following slide that we're going to show in a second is going to give you the steps for doing that. But a lot of times we get calls here at the office and they want to know what's wrong with my soil or what's wrong with the grass. I have this particular area that's turning brown and I have no reason why, what's causing it or anything like that. And then our response is going to be, when was the last time you took a soil sample? And a lot of times people have never heard of a soil sample before, or if they've done it probably, 5, 6, 7 years ago or so. So ideally they should be taken every 1 to 3 years. And that is really going to help determine what are the fertilizer needs of your lawn. A lot of people we find over fertilize their yards because they're just kind of shooting from the hip and they really don't know. They go in Lowe's or they go in the big box stores and they see all these fertilizer samples and they're like, they start reading, well, this is going to make my grass greener, or this is going to control certain insecticides and so forth. And they just pick it up without not knowing what their soil makeup and their composition is in their yard. So in efficient nutrition management programs, all nutrients should be applied based on soil test results, except for nitrogen. Nitrogen can be based on the soil type, the cultivar, which is the type of grass that you're growing, and the desired response. So we made up this little flyer here, and it's available in our office, and it's also available online at Harris County or harriscountyextension.org. How to take an accurate soil sample and why you should test your soil. And it goes through step by step of what the processes are in order to get a correct soil sample. If you're taking basically from your front yard or your backyard, you're going to want to include those in 2 different zones because for some reason, the soil makeup and the composition can change quite drastically from the front and the backyard sometimes, depending on what might have been in that particular site before, or if it's a new build house, there might have been more sand in the backyard from the construction area. There might be more compaction in the front yard and so forth, where you might have leaching of nutrients and so forth. And so that's why it's important to keep the 2 different areas separate. You're basically going to want to take 6 to 10 core samples of your testing area and dry those out as much as you can before you send them off to A&M in about a quart-sized bag. And you're going to take from those 6 to 10 core samples about 1 cup of soil, and you're going to, from your 5-gallon bucket that you're going to put your core samples in, you're going to mix those up, and you're going to take about 1 cup of soil from that particular area. And then you're going to put that in your quart Ziploc bag, and you're going to mail that off to A&M. A routine analysis for about $12 to soil sample is usually sufficient for most soil sample testings. You will see on the soil sample application, there's going to be many different choices that you can choose from, starting at $12, gradually going up to the $30 and $40, determining if you want to find out what the micronutrients are, and it gets more specific on the breakdown as you go further and further into it. And so this gives you all the answers and answers all your questions to how to take a soil sample. We can gladly send you one of those via email, or we can send you one through the email, through mail if you'd like, or whenever the office opens again, you can always come by and pick one of those up as needed. All right, so we're going to be talking a little bit more about turf grasses and grassy weeds. And so I think this is a great example of how you can kind of tell the difference of what you might have growing in your yard or what invasive species you might have. So I think it's really good that you kind of get an idea of how to identify some of the grasses that are growing in your yard or nearby or so forth, so that whenever you do call in with your questions to the county agent, whether you're here in Harris County or Waller County or Galveston or Brazoria. You can kind of help the county agent by going through and saying, well, I've seen the seed head of Bermuda grass and I know what it looks like, and this is what the species is that I have growing in my yard. Or if I have Bahia grass, you can see that it makes the peace sign, you know, and it's got those little black seed heads on it. And you can identify that one from your field, your pasture. And it goes through and it talks about Dallas grass. You can see how each one of those have a specific structure where their seeds are at. These are all going to be in seed head. So this is a great time whenever you see pastures that haven't been mowed for a while or so forth like that, you can kind of go through and identify those. The main one that we're going to be talking about there is that St. Augustine grass, which is pretty cylinder, and you got your seeds coming up and down. It's the one that pretty much stays on one spike. It doesn't really spike out like a lot of the other ones that you see here on the grasses and so forth. So this is a really good document, and it can be found at aggieturf.tamu.edu. And so that will be available if you want to email me as well. So next we're going to go into talking about our specific grasses. And the first one we're going to talk about is St. Augustine grass. And pretty much this is what's found in the majority of our lawns here, like I said, in Southeast Texas. You can see a picture of a St. Augustine lawn down at the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. Lush green. It's a coarse textured stolon grass, which means it grows on top of the ground and it spreads its stolons, and that's how it, you'll see sometimes if you have a concrete drive or a sidewalk butting up against the edge of a St. Augustine grass, you can actually see those stolon runners trying to spread out over the St. Augustine grass, and that's where you usually get your edging and stuff done like that and everything. So it's a really good ground cover that does well in full sun here in Southeast Texas. But for those of us who have a lot of oak trees and other trees on their pasture or their yards or anything, it is the most shade tolerant. It should be planted in about late spring and early summer. Most of the time it's planted by sod, and you can have professionals come in and do that, or you can actually go to some of the box stores and get your own sod yourself and put it down and use rollers. And we can give you more information if you're interested in doing that particular process. Mowing height should be between 2 and 4 inches using the third rule when determining frequency. Never take off more than a third of the leaf height whenever you're cutting. Remember, leaf height has direct correlation to the depth of the roots. So you want a deep root system for your grass, your turf, so that whenever those times of drought come in that we experience a lot of here in Southeast Texas, those roots can reach down in that soil and really get those nutrients from deep down in the soil and that water that's available. If you keep your turf cut really, really short, you're not going to have a lot of photosynthesis action going on. So it's not going to encourage deep root growth. So like I said, 2 to 4 inches is a perfect height for St. Augustine grass, and that will encourage pretty deep root growth. Fertilization basics. You know, we talk about a balanced fertilization rate, and again, we can't stress enough that soil testing is going to be beneficial to you here. Nitrogen, usually it's about 1,000 pounds, 1 to 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. And we do have a particular formula that we can give you to do that. But most of the time, if you can get by with knowing what the square footage of your lawn is, whether your front lawn or your back lawn, a lot of the fertilization or fertilizer bags will tell you pretty much how much area that will cover. And and it's going to be displayed on the bag and so forth. So a lot of times, a lot of the fertilizer companies are taking a lot of the guesswork out of it. And if you have questions on that, we can definitely help you get more accurate numbers on doing those fertilization ratios for your yard. Here is a home lawn maintenance calendar for St. Augustine Grass, and you can kind of see that it breaks down throughout the whole 12-month period of a year, and it kind of goes through on the left-hand side of the mowing, fertilization, aerification, thatch removal, weed control, irrigation, insect control, and disease control, and it goes across the whole 12 months. And it's a good reference tool and what you should be doing at that particular time. In the times that you can see right now is going to be the growing season, which is that May to October time. That's when you're going to see the most of your activity going on there. You know, you're talking about aeration to relieve soil compaction, removing problematic thatch. We talked about thatch in the first series of this session. Thatch is that that dead grass of the mowing that gets caught in between the blades of grass, and it kind of acts as an extra barrier, and it's a problem because your nutrients don't get down through that thatch whenever you're fertilizing, and it makes it harder for water to get down into the soil. So you might need to, if your grass has a lot of thatch in it, you might need to look into getting some type of machine to remove some of that. A lot of times it can be as easy as a rake, just going through and raking that thatch out, and it's going to be that dead, dry grass and everything, and you're going to take that out, and you're going to see your it's going to really help with, like, next time you have rainfall and so forth, you're not going to have so much runoff. And so that's a really good thing to do. Talking about mowing and so forth, scouting for take all root rot and gray leaf spot. We're going to be talking about some of those diseases as we go through the presentation here. But again, this is just a really good reference tool for you to have, and we can email that up to you, and it will be available on the video on our YouTube channel. That we're going to probably somebody's typing an address for our YouTube channel that will be on as well. So we're going to talk up next a little bit about pest disease and management for St. Augustine, and these are just a couple of those. We don't have enough time to go through all of them, but these are the most common, and I just kind of picked a couple of them out there. And most common insect pests: chinch bugs and white grubs. The white grub obviously is on the right-hand side. That looks like the C. That is actually the larva of the June bug. And so those are growing underground. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those in a second. And then we're going to talk about some foliar diseases: gray leaf spot, take all root rot, and large patch. So the first one we're going to talk about is chinch bugs. You'll see these all across the southern U.S. causing significant damage. They go from basically eggs to nymphs to adults pretty quickly. The adult bug is about an 1/8 to a 10th inch long with black body and white wings, and you'll see the picture of it there. There can be a variety of chinch bugs out there that you will see, but the one thing that they are known for is they feed on grass, the sap, and they inject the toxin that kills the plant tissue. So they have a chewing, sucking mouth, and they're going to destroy your grass by taking that phloem out, and it's going to cause the grass to brown. And but if you get an inspection, or if you go in your yard and inspect, sometimes get down on your hands and knees and just kind of do a little scouting, you will probably see the culprits there. And so that's another good tip there too. Don't just assume in your grass that you have such and such insect or whatever. Get down on your hands and knees and kind of do a little inspection. Do some scouting. Use a magnifying glass if you need. It's a really cool tool, and you can really find out a lot more about your yard and so forth. So they're serious pests of St. Augustine lawns. Like I said, they feed on the sap and so forth. And I lost my thing that we're going to talk about on the management, but we're going to come back to that one. So we're going to go on next to the white grubs. Like I said, these are the larva stage of the scarab beetles. Sometimes you heard them, or June beetles is the more common name of them. They live underground. They feed on the roots and other portions of warm season grasses such as Bermuda and St. Augustine grasses. The visible damage is going to include irregular shaped patches of dead turf grass resembling drought stress. Okay. Gray leaf spot is another one. We're talking about the foliar now. These are going to be things that you're going to see on top of the ground. Summer disease that develops after prolonged periods of warm, wet conditions. They feed on the roots and nope, my bad. That came out. But you will see that in the picture, you'll have those long foliar circles on the St. Augustine grass and so forth like that. So gray, tan, oblong lesions with purple and brown margins. And what's going to happen eventually is the grass is going to wilt, and that's going to be the result of gray leaf spot. Take all root rot. This occurs usually in wet conditions and in areas with a pH above a 6.5 or more. This happens more usually on fertile and sandy soils. So your symptoms include white circular patches that are brown and bronze colored and measure up to several feet in diameter. Infected plants will have dark brown roots when you go down and you pull up some of the grass and so forth, and you see that it almost looks like it's actually is just rotting. So they cause dark brown roots. They're going to be real easy to pull up out the ground. And so you can actually sometimes take like a handful of grass, of sod, of your turf, and pull it back, and the ground, the roots and everything will be rotten underneath it, and there's nothing holding that top layer of turf onto that soil. So it's real easy to pull up and down because there's no connection. You'll have dead grass on the top, and the reason the dead grass is on the top, there's no active root system holding it down into the soil. It's caused by a fungus that lives in soil found in many parts of Texas. It can produce spores, but spreads mainly through the roots and stolons. Okay. Next one is large patch. Probably a lot of you have seen this in some of your yards. There's a picture of it down on the bottom of the slide there. Usually occurs in the fall and the spring, forming circular patterns with yellow to orange outer borders. Fungus is present in the soil and thatch layer year round. So that we talked about thatch earlier. Again, thatch kind of harbors insect diseases, fungus, and so forth. So when you have that thatch build up in your yard, not only does it act as a barrier to the nutrients getting down into the soil and rain and water, it also provides a habitat for fungus and insects and everything to winter over or hide out in during the heat of the day. They will become comfortable in that thatch, and then that's how they will spread and everything. So removal of that thatch will help get a lot better results from a lot of your lawns. Especially severe in turf grass that is poorly drained and over fertilized. So we talked a little bit about over fertilization earlier and the need for a soil test. So whenever you just go out there and you start fertilizing without really knowing what the nutrient requirements are or what you're going to be low in your soil, and you start over fertilizing, whether it be nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, or some of the micronutrients and so forth, that is not necessarily always the best thing to do, because the repercussions of that, your turf is going to have adverse effects to that. So You want to make sure that you soil sample, and you want to make sure that your yard is properly drained. If you have a slope and so forth like that, make sure that you can control the runoff and so forth, that it doesn't get too heavy in moisture. The next one we're going to talk a little bit about is Bermuda grass. You can see a big difference in Bermuda grass in the picture on the bottom of the slide. It is usually a brighter green than the St. Augustine. St. Augustine is usually more of a dark green, and your Bermuda grass is going to be more like a carpet texture. You'll find Bermuda grass a lot on athletic fields, turf, golf courses, and real manicured lawns like you might see here. It is one of the more high maintenance grasses to be found. It does require more nutrients, more fertilization, definitely a lot more nitrogen applications throughout the year in order to keep that appearance up. It does really well in warm season. It's a fine textured turf that spreads both above the ground and below the ground. And it is drought tolerant, but it does not do well in shady areas like the St. Augustine grass does. It's one of the most well-adapted turf grasses for Texas home lawns. And when you're mowing it, this encourages laterally growth and results in improved density. So in St. Augustine grass, you're not going to have the density that Bermuda grass does. Bermuda grass is going to be very, very thick. Like if you ever put your hand on Bermuda grass and you rub it over the top of it, the grass per square inch, the blades of grass per square inch are going to be a lot more than if you would have in St. Augustine grass. For the main point, one of the main points is that the leaf blades of Bermuda grass are more fine textured. They're going to be a narrower, finer textured leaf than your broader, coarser grass on St. Augustine. And here is the home lawn management calendar that Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Aggie Turf puts out for Bermuda grass, and it basically does the same thing as the St. Augustine calendar, breaks it down by month and the particular application that you will be doing, whether it be mowing, irrigation, or fertilization, and it goes throughout the year, and it tells you, kind of gives you a little cheat sheet or great resource for what you should be doing to achieve that highest quality lawn that you want to work towards. So if you need a copy of that, again, that will be available as a resource, and you can reach out to us, and it will be also on the video that you'll be able to go back and watch. And then lastly, what we're going to be doing is talking a little bit about applying pesticides to the home lawn. So keep in mind that, you know, there's a picture here that of what all is needed whenever you go out and apply pesticides. A lot of times you'll see people who really don't understand the severity, I guess, of some of these insecticides that they could be spraying on their lawns, what it could be doing if they have pets or if they have children that play on the lawn or anything, and for personal safety. So you'll see that in this picture here, it's kind of blurry, but I think you kind of get the gist of it, and I'll walk through it with you. Whenever you're spraying any type of pesticide, you want to make sure that you're fully covered as much as possible for any type of exposure, because you never know how that reaction is going to be against your skin and so forth. You should always wear a long sleeve shirt and buttoned up to the collar of the neck if possible. You should wear unlined rubber gloves, and that's going to help for that exposure if you have any spillage on your hand. Long pants and at least boots that are going to be rubber soled and so forth. If you have any, if you happen to walk in any puddles or anything, that if you are having like tennis shoes or something, that's more absorbable. They're usually more breathable and everything, so that would take in the pesticide to your socks, to your feet and everything more rapidly than if you wear rubber boots or so forth. So keep in mind that I see a lot of times, sometimes people are out in their yards and they're spraying. They got the sprayer and they're walking around their 5-gallon sprayer. And one of the things that they don't have on in the picture, which is equally beneficial to you, is some type of goggles or glasses for safety on your eyes, because like if there's ever a light breeze blowing in the air, that can cause the backlash of the pesticide to come into your face. And so you definitely want to protect your eyes. And I guess go a little bit further, you see a lot of those masks now that everybody's wearing, protecting your nose, inhalation. You definitely don't want to breathe in any of those fumes or something. So take it seriously, be safe, keep those around you safe. If you're spraying outside, make sure if you have pets, make sure they're locked up in their pen or they're kept in the house. You don't want those running around while you're actually spraying in the yard, because they might think it's a game or something, and they might run right between your feet, and they might get a dose of some type of pesticide sprayed on them, and it could have adverse effects to them. Okay, you definitely don't want children playing by, and you definitely want to do it on days when you're going to have it's very calm. You're not going to have a strong breeze blowing or anything. You don't want any type of drift, which is going to be when the wind can carry the pesticide or an insecticide or something like that over to your neighbor's yard and affect their lawn in a bad way or anything like that. So you're going to want to watch and kind of plan for the weather. Some of these insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, and everything have specific times of the day when you can apply them. And also the temperature has to be right. So it can't be a particular temperature. Say, for example, like if it's too hot during the day or if it's too cool at night, it won't have the effects of what it's been tested as. So you need to make sure that you read the label. Okay, the label is the law. And so make sure that you follow that correctly. Always use the appropriate amount of dose of pesticide, the actual application rate of what's supposed to be. If it's a tablespoon per gallon of water, don't, if you feel like your grass is extra tough and you want to double up on the the particular pesticide or herbicide that you're using, don't double up on it. Okay, just use what you're using. If it doesn't have an effect on it, in usually, like if it tells you if it's like 7 to 10 days, if you don't, you can reapply and then reapply at that correct and same amount of dosage that you will have that's listed on there. But don't ever create your own formula, if you will. Define the area to be treated. You really don't want to, if you have a particular area in your yard that has maybe like a brown patch or something, you really don't need to spray the whole yard. If you just have a section of the yard that's being affected, just focus on that area and you should be fine. Choose the correct application tool. A lot of times you can use granular forms of herbicide or pesticide. So with that, you would need to invest in some type of spreader. And a lot of the spreaders now that you find at the big box store, they're easy to calibrate. You would need to calibrate for the particular type of granular matter that you're putting in there. And a lot of those are going to be, it's going to give you a breakdown rate. So, and a lot of those are going to have to be watered in a lot of times. So just keep that in mind when you have a spreader or anything like that. If you choose to go that method, other than the 1 gallon or usually 5-gallon pump sprayer, and you have a couple different types of those, make sure that if you use any type of pump sprayer, that you clearly mark on there with some type of permanent marker that this is chemical poison, that you don't ever use it for, say, for example, when it's empty, you really don't get a lot of the residue out of there. So you really don't want to use a chemical sprayer and then it goes empty, and then you decide you want to fertilize your roses, and you put a liquid fertilizer in the container that you did with your lawn application. So you are going to be basically killing your roses or any type of plants because you probably didn't get all the residue out of there. So properly marking the gallon or 5-gallon container, and like mark it, or you can sometimes get the stickers that has the poison emblem on it and so forth like that, that you know that that's what that particular sprayer is always going to be used for. And again, water properly. A lot of these pesticides and herbicides that we use in our lawns and everything have to be watered in. They have to be broken down so that they can get into the soil, into that root system, where the roots can take it up, and then they can be a defense against whatever problem is affecting them, I guess, if you will. Okay, so with that, I think that is the end of my presentation, and we talked about the upcoming homegrown lecture series, and next week, Miss Kim Perry, Prairie View Cooperative Extension Agent, is going to be following me up with focusing on fall vegetable varieties. So you want to definitely register for that. And Miss Brandy is going to follow it up with that and close out the month on elements of landscape design. So I appreciate coming to you today and sharing this information with you. If you have any questions, or if you would like to follow up with me, I'm sure somebody will be typing my email address in the comment box, and I can definitely share some of these resource materials with you. There is a lot of resource materials out there on the internet right now. The one thing I will tell you, though, if you're doing research on your particular lawn, like if you want more information on brown patch or dollar fungus and so forth like that, use reputable resources. Like if you're going to type in something, type in extension publication usually, and that's going to give you some type of land grant university that has done extensive knowledge, has extensive knowledge on it, and done quite a bit of research on those particular areas, as opposed to somebody who might just have a personal blog out there, and the trial, they might not have conducted a lot of trials, and you really don't know how it's going to affect your lawn and so forth. So if you usually stay with some type of extension publication that you type in your Google search, whether it be like Bermuda grass or for Dallas grass, removal, or if you want to find out more about St. Augustine grass publications from Extension Resources. And then that's going to give you a lot of, it'll pull up information from Texas A&M, all of our colleagues from LSU, from Auburn University, all the land grant universities that have done extensive knowledge on this. So just to keep that in mind, and that's a little tip for you there. So with that, I'm going to go back to Brandy and Paul and Kim.
Okay, well, Shannon, we do have a few questions for you. So the first one is dethatching and aerating a St. Augustine lawn. One is, do you do it? And if you do, what time of year do you do it?
So the aeration, so the thatching, that's going to happen, say, for example, like in your summer months, if I'm not mistaken, Paul, and feel free to chime in here on more recommendations. But that your thatch is going to kind of build up as you cut and mow grass throughout the summer and the spring. So that's when you're going to have that thatch build up. Aeration, I would think, would be more than likely happen during the springtime, if I'm not mistaken, Paul.
Yes, you are correct.
Okay, yeah. So your aeration, and there are a couple of different things that you can use for aeration. A lot of times, it's kind of funny because a lot of people will use shoes that have the little spikes on them. A lot of times if people play golf, a lot of times the spikes will go down actually, and you're actually, while you're cutting your grass, you can actually be aerating your soil, because those spikes are causing little tunnels of and it'll break up that compaction of the soil and so forth. So there are a couple little tricks and methods like that that you can use.
Okay. Next question we have is, how do you prevent that thatch layer from building up?
So the thatch layer is going to be, so first of all, is going to be, you don't want to let your grass get too tall before you cut it. And then, so if you say, for example, have, a lot of times you'll have thatch buildup is if we have in like your pastures and your larger lawns and so forth like that, when we have a lot of rainy days and it's, the yard is really saturated and you can't really put the lawnmower out there because it'll make ruts. And those ruts will cause compaction and so forth. So you really don't want to do it during that time. And so during all those rainy days, and then right after that, the sun comes out, and then the grass really just takes off from there, and it just really shoots up. And you have to get out there and start cutting grass right away. So you're probably cutting grass a lot lower, which you normally do, because you're trying to get it back down to that height that you want to keep it at. But you're cutting a lot more grass off, okay? And then that extra grass is going to come out the mower, and it's just going to get spread out throughout the grass, okay? So keeping the grass cut at a proper height, that 2 to 4 inches on St. Augustine especially, if you cut it at a 2-inch height, and for this, and you decide that's what you want to keep it at throughout the whole growing season or cutting season, keep it at that. Don't keep changing from 2 to 3 to 4 or 4 to 2 or anything like that. The best way to keep that thatch under control is keeping it at a particular height and cutting that grass at the same height all the time. And then if you do have some thatch buildup, just go ahead and rake it out. You know, and then you can put it in a compost pile in the backyard or what have you, or you can put it, you know, that's the way I would recommend doing it. Try not to put it in bags, because that's just going to be taken to the landfill and then taking up wasted space and stuff like that. So a lot of times too, if you have little grass clippings, I wouldn't worry unless the thatch gets really thick. But a lot of times those grass clippings act as a natural fertilizer. So as they break down in the grass, unless it's really too much grass, then you need to remove that. But if it's just regular grass clippings that are breaking down into the soil and everything, those are just natural fertilizers, and I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Okay, and you just touched on this, but there's a question sitting right here now. Should we bag our grass clippings or let them lie on the lawn?
So, and I'm going to open this up to my colleagues. I mean, everybody kind of has a personal preference there. It really depends. I use a compost pile on my lawn and so forth like that. If you don't have a compost pile, maybe check with somebody in your neighborhood who does. Kim, Paul, y'all have other thoughts and ideas on that?
If you're bagging and throwing it away, you're throwing away fertilizer.
Yeah.
Because inside that leaf tissue, as it breaks down, there's nutrients. So a lot of the mowers now are mulching mowers.
Right.
And if you are mowing at the proper height on a regular basis, you're good to go.
Yeah.
I don't
They even take the blades now, which are the mulching blades too. So if you cut your own grass, that might be something you want to maybe invest in. It cuts the grass into finer clippings. So that's a good point, Paul, that if you want to invest in those blades usually run a little bit more expensive than the regular blades, but they're an excellent tool in breaking up that grass into finer, clippings that will fall deeper into the grass and stuff.
Right. And so if you're using a mulching mower and you're cutting on a regular basis, you're going to have smaller pieces. They're going to break down. And then as the other person mentioned about the thatch, you're not going to see the thatch build up because that tissue is going to break down, and you're going to actually be able to add some additional nutrients to the soil profile. Okay, we got one more here. It's a little lengthy here, so hang in there, Shannon. So how can you differentiate between fertilizer burn versus is it pest or disease, infestation, or is it underwatering? And here's the scenario. They started to notice silvery spots in their new Bermuda. Weeks later, the spot was dead looking. I don't think I have pest, but I'm not sure if it was fertilizer burn or if I didn't water enough to get it well established.
Well, and I guess, and this is just me answering this. So, okay, so determine fertilizer burn from if it's infestation of a pest or a foliar disease or something. I guess to determine if it's a fertilizer burn, and you can answer that correctly, is if did you apply any fertilizer to that particular lawn in the preceding weeks up until noticing this. And if it was a fertilizer burn, if you did have a soil test or soil test taken on that, and you didn't really need any adjustments in your nutrients on the soil, and you maybe applied maybe like too much nitrogen or so forth like that, yes, then you can have a fertilizer burn. With that being said, a lot of times people, when you put down nitrogen, if you use a slow release nitrogen on your lawns, it really helps with that fertilizer burn, because that is going to break down over time with water and so forth like that. So you're not going to experience that burn as a more if you would just use a fast acting nitrogen on your soil and so forth. And it almost sounds like this was maybe some type of fungal, because it happened over time, if I'm not mistaken, Paul. It sounds like with the question.
Yeah, and honestly, you may want to take a few pictures, images, and you can always email them to Shannon.
Yeah.
Or the master gardeners or somebody, or email them to the office, and one of us will look at it. And because as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's always a lot easier if we're looking at an image, and you supply us with the history of maybe what's been applied, what's been done to it, and we can help narrow that down for you. All right, Shannon, I think that is it. I don't see any more questions. So I want to thank you for speaking today on Home Lawn Maintenance and Care Part 2. I want to thank you all for joining us. Next week, we will have Focusing on Fall Vegetable Varieties with Kim Perry. So we'll see you next week at 10 a.m. I want to thank you all for joining us, and you guys have a great rest of the day.